Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Victorious Ones podcast, the place where gaming meets comics, meets sports, meets movies, as well as inspiration. Of course, I'm your host, King Von Jr. You can follow me on social media on Twitter /X at 301 King Von Jr. You can follow the show's Twitter page at Victory Pod One. I'm also on Instagram at Mr. King Von Jr. You can also follow the show's Instagram page at Victorious Ones Podcast. I'm also the social media producer for Perfect Plex Talk Radio, hosted by a friend of the program, Mike Knox. And so there's quite a bit to talk about. I'm going to get into some of the coverage for the NBA playoffs. And also this past week I got a chance to see. Just recently I got a chance to see the early screening of Mortal Kombat 2. Highly encourage it. Hence, for those that are watching right now by way of YouTube, X, Facebook, what have you, I have this really cool New Day shirt, New Day Mortal Kombat mashup, which is very fitting. The timing is hilarious. I mean, very fitting, if you will. So if anything, this is going to be, my main topic of discussion right now with the departure of the New Day. It's a sad day. Yes, it is. I'm going to share my thoughts about that and what New Day, has meant for a fan like myself. I'm going to go into my Backlash predictions as well. And so, like I see, there's quite a bit to talk about. Obviously, we saw, within the first round of the playoffs, we saw quite a few, surprises, if you will. So like I said, so as far as, like I said, as far as the first round, we saw that the 76ers, of course, came back from a 3-1 deficit to defeat the Boston Celtics and send them home. We saw, of course, send them to Cancun rather. We saw the Lakers defeat the Rockets. Of course, right after KD, got injured, and so that experiment's blown up in their face so far. San Antonio Spurs, of course, eliminated the Portland Trailblazers. Of course, Minnesota Timberwolves eliminated the Denver Nuggets. So no more Joker. I guess not a joke anymore for him. Like I said, as far as that, like I said, as far as that, we saw the Cavs eliminate the Raptors. We saw the Knicks eliminate the Hawks. We saw the Thunder sweep the Suns. Of course, we saw the Pistons defeat the Magic. As far as first round, the first round is concerned, and so now we are on to the second round, and right now, of course, the New York Knicks crushed the Philadelphia 76ers in Game 1 of their second round matchup, 137-98. And we saw that the Timberwolves are up 1-0 over the Spurs with the upset, 104-102. The Pistons defeat the Cavs, 111-101. The Thunder crushed the Lakers. I already knew it. Well, 108-90. And so right now the 76ers are up against the Knicks, 79-77. And pretty soon we're gonna have the Timberwolves and Spurs in Game 2. That's what it is thus far. It's great to see the Joker get eliminated. Mr. 3-time MVP, whatever. People put him in the same conversation of the top 5 centers of all time and stuff. Like, nah, let's pump the brakes on that one. I'm glad that the Timberwolves did that. And it's also speaking on basketball, said Asia Wilson for the Las Vegas Aces, signed the most lucrative WNBA contract of all time. Congratulations to the GOAT herself, in my estimation. But yeah, all's starting to look right in the world. It's nothing like some good old NBA action to decompress from some of the toxicity of the wrestling world. And so as far as that's concerned, and let's talk about. If anything, that's the main thing. One of the main things I wanted to cover. as it pertains to the world of entertainment. Before I get into the main topic, the main topic on the menu, which is wrestling, and we see, we've seen, the the way TKO has gentrified WWE, if you will, in more ways than one, especially with the exit of the New Day, of course, in the midst of these pay cuts and releases that the company is doing, and of course, talking about the releases last week, most notably, especially when it came to Kyrie Sane, um, YS6, but Zelina Vega. But the main thing that got me was, of course, was the Kyrie Sane exit, as I said before, was because she was right in the middle of the storyline. So it's even more disturbing and terrifying when people get released, right after they were just on television. You know what I mean? Like, right in the middle of storylines. So now you have to scrap that all together. And of course, you saw the impact of that release with Oscar's segment. Oscar's backstage, or vignette with a interview with EO, and the big reason why why they did that one-on-one segment backstage, like it's in a cinematic form, was because they knew that if you put that in front of the crowd, the crowd would, the audience would destroy it, and the audience will hijack it and say, "We want Kyrie." They'll hijack it, but we want Kyrie chance. Just like how, just like how the crowd had those, did those CM Punk chants in the wake of Punk's exit. And of course, the crowd hijacked that. So during the whole, Occupy Raw, all that type of stuff. You know what I mean? Like, in the middle of Dan Bryan's Yes movement and everything like that. So, yes. So the thing is, of course, history has shown that the fans, will hijack a segment. Especially if there's a decision that didn't go their way. You know what I mean? And so, of course, we see that, of course, saw that Trick Williams and Sami Zayn's, rivalry continues. You know what I mean? So, of course, Trick said RIP, to the gingerbread man. You know what I mean? Rightfully so. And so we see that Trick and Sami are going to have a rematch at Backlash. I'm going, going to that pretty soon. When it's time to talk, when it's time to get my predictions. And we saw that the MFTs defeated the Usos. Jacob Fatu continued to dominate, attacking Brave Stars to send a message to Roman Reigns. Cody Rhodes defeated Ricky Saints before being attacked by the Reign General Gunther and Damian Priest. Our Truth retained the tag titles against Fraxian. So, so if anything, those were, of course, those are some of the highlights of SmackDown, along with JC Jane pulling out upset victory over Charlotte Flair after interference from Fatal Influence, though Rhea Ripley eventually made the save, but it was too late. Charlotte already lost by that point. And so for the for the women's tag team championships, we saw that Brie Bella and Paige defeated Irresistible Forces and Nia Jax Last Legend surprisingly. Like, come on now, what are we doing? Royce Keys defeated Angel Garza. Yeah, so like I said, of course, Sami Zayn continued to masquerade as a gingerbread man to troll Trick Williams. So as far as that's concerned, and also, of course, when it comes to Monday Night Raw, we'll go into these results in a minute as well. And I mean, also, last Monday, of course, this past Monday was Star Wars Day, so may the 4th be with you all. I certainly hope it was. I certainly enjoyed my Star Wars weekend, or rather, my Star Wars Day. But of course, on Raw, the main highlight was the Jacob Fatu physically dominated Roman Reigns for the second consecutive week. Just humbled him. So we saw that. And of course, this is the go home episode of Raw, so we know how go home segments can usually be, with the exception of Open and Brock. But I digress. And so as far as the other um, keynotes of Raw, that Braun Breaker attacked Seth Rollins. As Rollins was walking to the ring to open the show, of course, Braun jumped him from behind, and of course, he physically dominated Rollins, even attacking some security guards to continue his assault. And Breaker eventually broke free one more time to deliver a spear to Seth in the middle of the ring. And and of course, I know there are a lot of people point out, how Braun didn't really have that much force on his spear on Seth at WrestleMania, especially run down that ramp and just launching at him like that. You could definitely tell that there was part of him that that it didn't really connect and hit the same way. And also mainly because Seth did get out of the way. He kind of sidestepped, so that certainly had a big hit in doing that. And of course it's funny how Braun Breaker can come back and still you can't really cut a promo. You know what I mean? So yeah, but as far as that, we saw the JD McBobblehead defeated Finn Balor by way of pinfall after a headbutt. That's funny in and of itself. I mean, the jokes write themselves. For JD McBobblehead, who's known for for being a punchline, and he already knows he's a punchline because of his head. He defeats Finn Balor of always with a headbutt though. Of always to win of the different ways to win is with a headbutt. I say, yeah, this definitely a red. This definitely a troll on him. That sounds like something that Vince will make him do. And then we saw that Ethan Page and Rusev defeated Penta and Javon Evans by way of pinfall after Page hit Penta with the Fisherman Buster. Becky Lynch interrupted Soul Rooker's Raw contract signing as they both went back and forth. Of course, Becky attempted to punch Soul, but only to land a shot on Adam Pearce. Then Rooker hit Soul Snatcher to lay Becky out. And but of course, that there was a botch on that. So she definitely Rooker was definitely getting destroyed online over that. And more on that a little bit later. Per our previous conversation on Turnbuckle Talk last night. We said Joe Hendry defeated Austin Theory by way of DQ after interference from Logan Paul. And of course, we saw Obafemi defeated Otis by way of pinfall with fall from grace in the first week of the Obafemi Open Challenge. And Oba has a way of as a thing for definitely has a thing for tossing around Vikings. Look what he did with the War Raiders, Brock Lesnar, and now Otis. You know what I mean? So hey, I'm all for it. And Juneteenth is only a month away. Anyway, Oscar missed the Io Sky during the sit-down interview, as I mentioned before. And Oscar's just naturally funny. She is a straight-up super villain, and I love that for her. And so when I saw this segment, I started laughing. We saw the El Grande Americano, the original, and Los Hermanos Americano defeated El Grande Americano Nuevo, Bravo Americano, and Real Americano by way of pinfall. After too many Grande Americanos at this point, they probably are all right now. You know what? They running this into the ground. They really run this thing to the ground. But the main thing I wanted to discuss was the departure of the aforementioned New Day. Over the weekend, there was shockwave that was felt. There was a ripple effect that was felt all throughout the internet, all throughout the wrestling world, the wrestling community, what have you. As the New Day surprisingly made the exit, and as soon as I open up Instagram, all of a sudden it says Twitter, as soon as I open up, it just shows the New Day. It just says thank you. I said, wait a minute. And then I get the details later. It's like, oh, they left. The headlines kept saying, New Day parts ways with WWE. Saying, thank you, New Day. Thank you. Just sat there. Everybody in the locker room, online was thanking them under the post, especially, when Xavier Woods, had a long, Instagram post for that video, of him over the waterfall, and the whole locker room saying thank you for everything. Thank you for all you've done, and everything like that. And for him to say that he walk away as Austin Creed, I said, wow, yeah, this ain't no kayfabe. This ain't no kayfabe. This ain't no make believe. This ain't no storyline. This ain't no gimmick. Nah, they meant that. They said it with their chest. And so, New Day, is all about, controlling the narrative. And so, um, for them to mutually part ways, clearly they did not like the direction that this company has been going. It feels like this new regime under TKO feels like a mirror, looking at a mirror image of the way this current administration has run this country. It's almost identical. TKO has drained and hemorrhaged the morale of the company. Now, I will say that there have been periods where the product itself, at times was worse, but the locker room morale is at an all-time low. And that's very staggering. It's very disturbing. It's something that leaves you on edge. To think that, anything can happen at this point. If those guys who are fixtures, who deserve to be WWE lifers, leave, then it's been a toxic and shaky situation. Kofi's last known WWE appearance was him watching a Javon Evans match on one of the TVs backstage. And so Kofi definitely wanted to pass the torch to Javon in a roundabout way. He kind of did, because we definitely see a lot of those similarities in Javon anyway. But here's the thing, though. The New Day, their impact on wrestling and the culture in and of itself, the wrestling landscape, their impact cannot be denied. It cannot be overshadowed. It has to be spoken on. And I've spoken on the New Day various times on this podcast. I've said it over and over. As long as I have this podcast, I will defend the New Day. I've said numerous times. This podcast is a pro New Day podcast. And I've done episodes. Especially for Black History Month, it's New Day Rocks. I'm talking about like the greatest matches and things like that. And when I talk about the greatest tag teams and factions, they've been at the top of the list. WWE themselves even put New Day at the top of the tag team list, rightfully so. They're 11-time tag team champions. They were once the longest reigning tag champs of all time after they broke Demolition's record. So they went 489, and the Usos have broke that record and been reigning tag champs for over 600 days, whatnot. And of course, recently they were just recent tag team champions, already. But before that, like I said, that was, before that, it's when they broke the record. And then New Day Usos, forever arch rivals. And so the thing is, what made the New Day special was that they were not afraid to be themselves. They were not afraid to bet on themselves, invest in themselves when it comes to cosplay, when it comes to various things. New Day even had podcasts. There was even, they even had their own Netflix series with The Undertaker. With The Undertaker. There was even a point where they even sold more merchandise than John Cena himself. So titles aside and things like that, that in and of itself is a huge, notch on their belt. A major bullet point in their resume to say that they sold more merch than John Cena. As a collective, they could not be stopped. This was a group that saved the careers of all three of them. Kofi was, uh, you know, the most known. Like I said, he was the veteran. He definitely, like I said, he definitely had the most experience. Had been around, quite a minute before the group came together. And originally he was having that huge push, and of course going to that Randy Orton storyline, of course with leg drop Orton, through that table in audience, and destroyed that car and all this other type of stuff. And of course there was that match where Kofi made a mistake, and Orton called him stupid, and stuff like that. So eventually, that push got briefly got derailed. Um, and so as a matter of fact, Kofi was even supposed to be in one of those elimination chamber matches. I want to say it was on 9, but of course I know that the Edge hijacked that and got that from him. And so so all these different things, and this is a pretty new day. So he's mostly known as the IC champion, U.S. champion, even the tag team champion with CM Punk before. But the New Day is what catapulted Kofi's career. The same thing with Xavier Woods. So I think initially this was his vision. He was going nowhere as Consequences Creed. And so of course it wasn't until the advent of the New Day where so many different doors start opening up, especially when it came to to that up down down YouTube channel. Big E, his career was definitely saved by joining the New Day because so Big E was only known for doing that 5 count and doing NXT and all this other type of stuff, but he had no mic skills, he had no real personality. It wasn't until the New Day we really started to see that shine. So when it comes to in ring standpoint, championship standpoint, when it comes to a cultural standpoint, the thing is, the New Day have reached heights that no other black tag team or faction had ever reached, and they broke the mold because typically, when people want to see black wrestlers, even when it comes to black wrestling fans themselves, typically, the name that comes to mind is usually the Nation Domination. And the New Day shattered that mold and proved that you don't have to be, super duper Black Panthers, Stokely Carmichael, militant, Fred Hampton, militant, no disrespect, but I'm just saying, the thing is that they showed you didn't have to be all that, just to make your point, just to make names for yourself and things like that. New Day showed that it was cool to like video games, hence the up, down, down. See so many wrestlers in the locker room, joining in on that, whether it's playing, whether it's playing a Tekken game, Street Fighter, Madden, what have you. Just see them in that element was very rewarding, and it was all because of the New Day. And so initially, the New Day was, initially Vince, came up with this idea, and roundabout way, deep down, probably that they were going to get buried for it. But little do you know, that in the long run, they would take what was given to them and turn it into gold, and that's exactly what they did. So in that first, in the original, vignette, where they had the choir behind them and singing, and got Kofi and Biggie, talking like they was preaching. You know what I mean? So it's like New Day was look like a TD Jakes, Kirk Franklin, and Ty Tripp cosplay, all rolled in one or whatever. And so it's like you think that it's going to be this cheesy and corny thing, and lame, only to find out they, as a fan, you've been catfished. You know, catfish. You know, the song. You know, the term catfish pretty much what it, you know, when they say that, you know, that you trick somebody, and that's what WWE did. And so it wasn't too long after that, you know, New Day, like I said, of course, took the idea that Vince had and elevated it to a whole nother level. You know, and they made the most of, you know, what was given to them, and they maximized it to the absolute fullest extent. You know, and you know, the thing is, you know, Xavier Woods, you know, took that idea and vision of the New Day, and you know, use it to, you know, to bring more eyes to the product. You know, I always been a fan anyway, but it was just something about New Day that just stuck out to me the most. You know, they definitely shared very common interests with me, and you know, they're legendary tag team, legendary faction, and it's just that, you know, the way that TKO, you know, what I mean, is, you know, is doing things. It's just like, you know, it takes away your love for the game. You know, it's going to show that, like I said, Vince had an idea for the New Day. They took that idea and completely elevated it. And so, you know, for the success they had, um, they produced 2 out of 3. You know, 2 out of 3 of them were WWE champions. You know, regardless of the way that it ended, at least they held that title. You know, like I said, you know, so cool. You have so you have 2 WWE champions, 1 King of the Ring winner, and so at first they're known for not turning on each other. You know, at least that was until, you know, the whole Big E segment happened, and they did absolutely nothing with it. You know, they definitely went to bed when it came to that. You know, and like I said before, you know, New Day, like I said, you know, their greatest weapon is their sense of humor. You know, and just the thing with them is that they know how to be serious when it's necessary. You know, they know how to turn on or off, and so that they're able to maintain a very perfect balance, a very healthy balance. And so yeah, you know, it's just like they become the measurement, the quintessential, you know, black faction or tag team. You know what I mean? Like, you know, they've definitely broke barriers, you know, shattered the mold, whatever you want to call it. You know, and for them to, you know, to make their exit, like I said, just shows, you know, how toxic that environment's got to be. It's very disturbing, you know, the more that I think about it. You know, maybe because, you know, because these guys have have earned their place as legends. It's only a matter of time, you know, only a matter of time before they go before they go in anyway. You know, and so it's just like what are we doing here? And it's been, you know, revealed that apparently there's other wrestlers taking pay cuts, you know, but they haven't left. You know, of course, saw that Bailey, I guess, you know, she didn't take a pay cut. That's why she shared that picture on you know, on Instagram. So shout out to Detox, the chief, you know, who made that shirt, made that design. So big ups to you. Um, and so with New Day making their exit, along with these releases and things like that, you know, like I said, it should just go to show how uh, bankrupt this company is from a fan standpoint. You know, it's atrocious. It's unacceptable. And with and the thing is, TKO is all about the empire. It's all about the brand more than anything else. You know, WWE has been become been a uh, publicly traded company for, you know, for quite some time. You know, the thing is,
their product is hemorrhaging. The legacy is definitely taking a hit, because of this affiliation with TKO. And TKO has become way too corporate, even for my own taste. And I had a conversation about this with somebody, not long before seeing his last match. It's just that they have definitely turned the tide, and not in a good way. And and the thing is, not only that, but another thing I want to talk about also is that apparently, TKO's got rid of that Legends contract. And the Legends contract, was of course, for the sake of not only highlighting these legends, but also, in the event that they need a legend storyline or whatever, there's always one right around the corner. And TKO's doing away with all that stuff, so much so to the point where they don't even respect the legends themselves. The Hall of Famers, Kevin Nash, even said that in catering, they weren't really serving like that. I was like, man, and WWE has definitely lost its essence. It's definitely lost its, what made it exciting to watch. And as much as people want to see Vince come back, and by the way, nobody does a storyline better than Vince. I will say that. Yeah, that's what it is. And nobody does drama better than him. Nobody does presentation better than him. Unfortunately, he got hemmed up and caught up in all kinds of different troubles and whatnot. So it's just that, but like as far as that, however, unfortunately, Vince, was the main one, selling the company to TKO in the first place, and so, TKO has just definitely become a Frankenstein monster, that's it's no longer in the castle, but you see him running through the streets. And so yeah, and the thing about it is that this is what happens when you don't pass down the family. This is what happens, when your relationship with your family is not that strong, and and the fact that WWE is under TKO, that's prime example of it. That Vince would rather sell his company and his hard work and all these things. He'd rather sell the company, to strangers and outsiders instead of his very own children. Come on now. So the thing is, it goes to show that TKO is very much out of touch. It's obvious. You know what I mean? And it's just that WWE's morale, from a fan standpoint, as well as from a business and locker room standpoint, morale is at all-time low. And so if I were John Cena, I'd be embarrassed to announce those attendance records at WrestleMania. I couldn't do it. And so because of these prices and because of the product and whatnot, it's just that TKO didn't finally start lowering the WrestleMania prices until way too late. They're outpricing these fans, and so the main thing that they want to make sure there's definitely outreach. It's just like, I'll say after that. yeah, I mean, WWE is definitely on a downturn right now, and they need all the lifeblood that they can get, and so so like I said, TKO, TKO is also catering to the UFC audience, the larger NFL, audience, if not, so if anything, that's in there. Those, so, um, those some of the main demographics. But yeah, you know, but yeah, like I said, as far as that, uh, it's just a painful look. You know, TKO like I said, they're just hemorrhaging money, hemorrhaging money, and they really, really dug themselves in a massive hole. And like I said, TKO is catering to, like I said, they catering to that Super Bowl crowd, especially when it came to WrestleMania. That was a prime example of that. They want to cater to that Super Bowl audience, that celebrity audience, and whatnot, um, while neglecting the fans, that put money in your pocket, just because they want to see you play. So yeah, and, you know, I mean this, and the thing about it also is, this is TKO is also proof of why house shows are important. Because they've eliminated house shows. House shows can be a test run for a match, for a story, for a storyline or whatever. And the thing is, and the thing about it is that the louder of an ovation or reaction that you got, like that you got house shows. So it's just like the louder the reception that you got on a house show, um, more often than not, that ends up translating on the main program. For instance, this, like I said, this is the power of house shows. The big reason why Flair versus Hogan did not happen in WrestleMania 8 was because Vince had them have matches at these house shows and see what the attendance looks like, and they definitely underachieved. And it was not it was not the result that Vince so it was not the result that Vince had expected. And so because of that, they ended up having a pivot. Where they had Flair versus Savage, Hogan versus Sid. That's the reason why. That's ultimately. So that's ultimately the reason why the match became what it became, and why we never got that Flair versus Hogan match at WrestleMania. It's because the crowd was not having it. So the house show audience can be and make or break. And the better you do with them, the better the chances are. And so I say all that to say that it would have benefited Sol Ruka um, to be on house shows. It definitely would benefit, because like I said, the house shows are where you can really polish up your skills and personality. And without that, you're just throwing them out there. Well, without the house shows, you're just throwing them out there, and throwing them out there to be into the lions and to get slaughtered. Just leave them hanging high and dry, like nah. So yeah, just like the trajectory of TKO was at an all-time low. Especially especially with the New Day's exit. But yeah, like I said, as far as that, That's, and also one more thing, I wanted to give my predictions for Backlash. But yeah, like I said, as far as that, the New Day are game changers in more ways than one. You know, they are absolute legends before they even formally retire. You know, yeah, those who can go to the Hall of Fame as a group as well as on their own merits. And New Day, they definitely blaze a trail. Because without him, without them, you wouldn't have someone like the young OG Javon Evans. So the thing is, New Day is absolutely, um, you know, instrumental, to the landscape of what we call wrestling. So I was like, yeah. And so now, last but not least, it's time to get my predictions, for the 2026 Backlash. And so for Danhausen and his mystery partner versus Kick Wilson and Miz, I'm going with Danhausen, whoever his partner is. And when it comes to Io Scott versus Oscar, I'm actually going for Oscar on this one. Surprisingly, right? For the U.S. Championship, Trick Willie Dynamite. Trick Willie Dynamite, of course, Trick Williams versus Sami Zayn. The winner of that match, Trick Williams, retains the title. We have Seth Rollins versus Braun Breaker. I have, if anything, I have Braun Breaker winning this one. The World Heavyweight Championship, this is going to be a showdown right here. This is definitely going to be a war. We have Jacob Fatu versus Roman Reigns. So in the end, I have Roman retain the title. And for anybody who thinks that Roman will go to AEW, the joke is on you. So yeah, pretty much. So now it's time to go into birthdays. So like I say, yeah. Now it's time to go into my birthdays. Sorry about that. I'm going to take my time for a minute. And so, and of course, today, the Say Hey Kid with Maze will turn 95. CB3 Chris Paul turns 41. Of course, Meek Mill turns 39. Of course, he's all on May 6th. And of course, Vanessa Bryant celebrated her 44th birthday, by the way. Like I said, Lash Legend turns 29. And of course, May 7th, Kevin Owens turns 42. Owen Hartwood turns 61. Io Scott turns 36. And of course, like I said, that's on May 7th. On May 8th, of course, Rosario Dawson turns 70. 47, excuse me. Oh my gosh. Tongue tied. But like I said, she was born in 1979. Yeah, like I said, Rosario Dawson turns 47. So, of course, you see that Ghostface Killer, Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, Ghostface Killer turns 56. And of course, on May 9th. And William Regal, of course, turns 58 on May 10th. And so that's it for me when it comes to birthdays. And just always remember, to have victory through faith, have know your identity in Christ, have courage in trials, and of course, to overcome, and to rely on God and to yield for victory. And so, of course, I also want to say that, that when you put God, of course, also want to say the greatest He that is in you, the He that is in the world. When you put God in first place, you don't have to worry about being in last place. And please make sure to listen to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, excuse me, and of course on YouTube, youtube.com, of course, /Von Resper Jr.
Please make sure to like, subscribe for more great content. And thank you very much for listening and watching. And may this day be the absolute very best day of your life.